the thing about mascots and things like that is that people are doing research on these things to show how seeing these mascots negatively affects Indigenous children. Like there are studies that are now coming out that are talking about these things, but it is so much just a part of our holding on to the American dream, holding on to these pastimes of in sports. I mean, it's just so hard to fight anything in sports. So to say like actually what that is doesn't honor us. I was born in Oklahoma in an Indian hospital, and I grew up between Oklahoma and New Mexico. And then when I was 8, my family moved to Missouri. And before that time, we were somewhat involved in like the Baptist church. We would go to church sometimes and things like that. But when I was 8 and we moved to Missouri, my dad left our family. Just my parents got divorced not long after that, and we moved again to a different house. And my dad moved back to Oklahoma. So then there was sort of this split in my identity where I was living in Missouri, going to church and then going to visit my dad in Oklahoma again. And so, grew up, my mom remarried a Southern Baptist pastor who's my stepdad. And so grew up getting very involved in the church, but also kind of becoming more and more assimilated into white evangelical Christianity.
I noticed many moments in the book where you would make comments like you would say something like the way people see us, if they would even see us at all. What is it like to be paid lip service to as the progenitors of this land, but in reality to be neglected?
We have not been prepped well at all in our education systems to, you're right, like Indigenous stories, who we are is swept under the rug, or we are just considered these like characters from Westerns that have disappeared. I mean, it's like we're dinosaurs, like we went extinct one day.
There are all sorts of negative stereotypes of Indigenous peoples in this country, right? And, mascots, chants like tomahawk chants, games like Cowboys and Indians that we grew up playing. Um, and I think the interesting thing to me is pretty much everyone I know agrees that those are wrong, but we continue to uphold those anyway. Mm-hmm. And I want to hear from you about what that feels like as a person. Like, what does it feel like when people are doing something that's harmful and they know is harmful, but they continue doing that anyway?
Yeah. So the thing about mascots and things like that is that people are doing research on these things to show how seeing these mascots negatively affects Indigenous children. Like there are studies that are now coming out that are talking about these things, but it is so much just a part of our holding on to the American dream, holding on to these pastimes of in sports. I mean, it's just so hard to fight anything in sports. So to say like actually what that is doesn't honor us. And last year we went out of town, and our school, which is a pretty progressive school in our city, we went out of town and we came back and found out that one of the teachers had led the entire school in the tomahawk chop. And we live in Atlanta, so they did that. And we came back to school, and I had to email the principal and go through this process of trying to explain why it's harmful for my 2 children to be doing the tomahawk chop, and all their friends are around them doing it, and it's becoming a normalized thing in their school.
Indigenous communities all over the world have experienced white supremacist violence in a way that many of us haven't.
This has been really interesting for me because I grew up as a Christian. So as an adult, learning about things like the doctrine of discovery, which basically gave European men the ability to go to any lands that they deemed heathen or not Christian enough, and they could do whatever they wanted. They could take that land, but that means, of course, that they're going to do what they want to the people of that land. And that is what the foundation of America is. It's built on this idea. One for me that's particularly damaging as an Indigenous woman is like something like a Disney movie. So like Tiger Lily and Peter Pan, or Pocahontas, you have these over sexualized ideas of like an Indian maiden, or and I grew up with those images. So we grow up with these images, and then the world around us grows up with these images. So then Indigenous women are viewed as these over sexualized beings. I think that like things like missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls is part of this over sexualization and targeting of Indigenous women that we don't talk about nearly enough. If you live in America, then white supremacy and colonization are always going to be brushing up against who we are. So stepping back and like looking at the systems of Christianity that I have been complicit in, the ways that we have colonized other people, the ways that I was colonized, like how can I stop perpetuating those cycles of colonization? And so far that's meant that I've stepped out of the church, the physical church, for a while, to examine like I even enter church spaces with all of who I am. And I don't know. I'm in a lot of sort of that area of asking, what is it supposed to look like? But I meet other people all the time who are also Christians, who are trying to decolonize as well, who are considering that Jesus wasn't a white guy. And so there's a different Jesus that we did not learn about growing up. Things like that, to me, those are very tangible. But I think that we can all kind of ask, what systems of colonization are we participating in?